go. So yeah, no, NAM is usually it's a big expense, but like I say, it's just it just gets more and more complicated. We try not to overreach by changing everything every year because it's too stressful if you're doing a load of I know this year why don't we, and it's some massive undertaking and it becomes very
Yeah.
Look at that! I still can't believe it. Steve. That is ridiculous, man. Look, the rest of us are all from sort of darkened rooms, and there's Steve in his beautiful, sunny veranda.
Steve wins.
Yeah, okay, Steve, you win. Look at that. I can't believe how vivid that looks. That's amazing. Good Lord. So, yeah, we got Gaz coming at some point. And
cool.
So Matt, Steve, and Gaz and me. I better hit record on that thing. I keep forgetting. Just my backup. I've tweaked the compressor settings on the output bus this week, folks, because somebody said the level matching is not always great. So I'm going to try and squish it all down a bit. So let me know in the stream if it's okay. Cool. I'll just turn that down. Steve's looks like he's putting on his. Sounds like he's putting on his headset.
Are you picking up my keyboard if I'm typing like this?
Yeah, we do a bit, but it's okay.
Okay. Go gently.
Go gently. Yeah. Oh, so I've been messing with the polyend. Hey, Gaz.
Hello.
Hello, Gaz.
Hiya. Hey, Matt.
How are you?
Yeah,
Gaz,
good, thank you.
Checks. I thought that was a postcard, but that's actually where Steve is. He's not in.
Blimey. Very nice.
It just goes to show how a webcam can perform with the right level of light in it. Look at that. Steve. Unbelievable.
Oh, Steve. All right for some.
Wow.
Blimey, yeah.
Steve, I thought you just posted your desktop or something then for a minute. So azure.
Man, it's lovely at the moment down here. It really is. It was so hot earlier, but luckily I was in my car, which is why I'm out of breath. That doesn't make sense. I've just been racing to get home. We've been in Seville for the last few days, and so we missed the midday sunshine, but it's a glorious late afternoon here. Come on down, everybody. You'd like it.
Oh, yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah.
That looks great. Blimey.
Can you hear me okay? Is it all coming through?
Yeah,
all
it's
right?
all coming through fine. We have
Okay.
everybody. You definitely have that. And I was just saying that the webcam really responds well to bright light, so your image looks really crisp.
Oh, that's good. That's
vivid.
That's good.
And as also
Yeah.
in our well, Gaz's room isn't darkened, but me and Matthew are in our kind
Mine's
of
a
like
bit.
synth caves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gaz is doing all right. He's got plenty of light up there, but that beats all. Definitely.
Yeah.
It is kind of nice. And just behind us, we've got that's Puerto Banús just there. If you can see it. If I'll come out the shot. Actually, you can see that that's Puerto Banús just there, and the
Right.
Mediterranean is just behind it, which is kind of nice. And at some point, probably in this broadcast, we'll see a ship or some kind going past in the background, which I think could be quite a nice feature, I suppose. Or maybe not.
Stop.
Maybe I'm just. Sorry.
It'll just reinforce how much of a lovelier time you're having where you are. But fair enough. I'm sure you've worked hard for it, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be. Yeah, look at that. And do you get proper tea down there?
I bring it with me. Actually.
Yeah, me too.
The tea down here isn't that great. It's they sell Tetley and all the sort of British brands because it's the Costa del Sol, so there were loads of Brits around, but they seem to be like the end of line Tetley, if you know what I mean. It's like sort of Tetley dust in a bag.
The dustiest dust. Yeah, yeah. I know that feeling. Yeah, I always take like 160 tea bags with me to NAM and hand them out to people as gifts in little plastic bags.
Yeah, I'm sure that goes down really well.
Yeah, well, it does actually. I mean, they're not used to the strength of the Yorkshire tea is fine. Right. Okay. So we have everybody. Look at that. I can't stop looking at your vivid colours, Steve. I mean,
Steve wins.
It's really interesting because I mean, I guess you must have good bandwidth as well because the resolution, even the kind of flowers
Yeah.
moving and stuff, is really.
Well, actually-
it's not pixelating or anything.
No, the setup that I've got here is it's fiber optic downstairs, and the ISP is just on the other side of this building, so it's as close to the raw internet as you can get, which is obviously really lucky. But the actual connection from the laptop is it's an old connector that can do Ethernet over the mains.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're really
yeah.
useful.
Yeah, they really are, and as you recommended to me, actually, Nick. But the maximum bandwidth down there is 10 megabits, but it's symmetrical. So
All
I've
of
got
it.
10 megabits. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It seems
grand.
to work all right. Yeah.
It sure does. Right. Well, I guess we could do a show then. Right. Let's see where we're all going. So I think we're almost ready for this. Everybody ready? Gaz, you ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, just a bit more level from you, Gaz, because I want to make sure I try and get the levels a bit more.
Okay, more level, more level. Hello,
That's good.
hello, hello.
That's good.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, standing by. Let me just get myself all lined up and ready. Okay, here we go.
Sonic Talk.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 548, recorded today, Wednesday, the 5th of September. I guess we're getting towards the end of the summer, though it hasn't quite felt like it. I'm not wearing shorts anymore, but I know a man who is. But we'll get onto that in a little bit of time. Sonic Talk is the podcast to do with music technology, anything to do with synthesizers, software, even DJ stuff, iOS. Controllers, live production, studio work, all of those things are encompassed in this. And we thank Isotope, who will be providing a prize a little bit later on. You can win a copy of their excellent vocal synth, vocal processing suite. Vocal Synth 2, in fact. That'll happen about halfway through the show, so do check that out. I want to say hello to our YouTube chatties. Hello, YouTube chatties. And also to our friends in the IRC chat. We've got two. I did actually look into, what was it called? Discord. But I couldn't find a way to embed it properly in the site, so it would have to be in a different window. So until I can find that out, it looks quite good. So thanks for those who suggested it, but I still need to work out some things. So for now, we're going to stick with the IRC and the YouTube stuff. So once again, we have a full quota of guests. I'm going to start with Mr. Matthew Hodson, who's there in his studio in Brighton, where he's also course director. Is it course director of BIMS?
Course leader.
Course leader.
Yeah, so I run the music production course, at BIM in Brighton, the British and Irish Modern Music Institute. And we've been there today actually signing off a load of student work. That's just finished for the previous academic year, which is always great. One of the best things about the job actually is actually hearing what the students finish and do as their final output on the way out of the course, basically. And, we was all sat around today listening to stuff, just thinking how great this is. And we had some great meetings as well with, I can't say too much, but with some record labels about what we can actually do with this music in a more meaningful way, rather than it just kind of just disappearing once they finish at the college. So it's been really great, great day today, great afternoon.
Oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, I imagine it's very positive because, I mean, a lot of new young talent is outstandingly good, and you just think, oh, how on earth did they get that good at that age?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, they come on the course and they're already motoring. They're putting out so much on YouTube and Bandcamp and SoundCloud and things like that. The quality when they're coming in is so great. And then the course that I run essentially is about developing them as a freelancer so they can exist in this current music production world. As we all know, you have to put your hat on many different things at many different times. So it's just getting them prepared for that, really.
Well, good. That sounds like a very positive day. Well, thanks for joining
it's been
us,
good.
Matthew.
I wish
and
I
we'll-
was where Steve was, though.
Yeah, well, I was gonna make that the last
all right.
reveal, just so that if those of you who maybe have just tuned in, or you're just seeing the final edited version. Hello, Gaz Williams, GazWilliams.me, bass player, music technologist, producer, mastering engineer, all of those kind of things. How are you, Gaz?
Yeah, I was thinking about those students. They might superficially be making good music, but there's no real kind of lived-in sort of weary kind of blood pouring out of the eyes kind of thing going on there, is it? It's all technique and twiddly blooming youngsters.
In your dreams.
What do they know?
They haven't done the hours in the van, Gaz, maybe yet.
Yeah, God.
That's to come.
No, only joking. But I mean, isn't it? I mean, gosh, some of the youngsters I've been, working with, God, this 14-year-old was showing me some stuff he was doing, and that was amazing. Like really, really good. And he was playing all the instruments himself, and I was just like, oh, just how good are they going to get? So yes, it's definitely an intriguing prospect. I mean, I was thinking about this as well. Just sort of whatever you want to learn, there is just well, actually, my mum has just started learning the ukulele, and it's the first instrument she's ever picked up, and she's having so much fun with it. And she's gone, God, there's just so many lessons on YouTube, and she's obsessed with it, and she's making really good progress with it. Largely to do with the fact that there's just such a lot of
and you can
help
just
out
pick it,
there.
and you can pick it up anytime you like, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, but I think this is something that we've talked about in previous Sonic talks. So it's sort of like, what is it all going to lead to? Where is it going? When is the new incredible music that's going to come out that's a culmination of everything? And I've been hearing little bits of it, and certain people just like the more different influences and different techniques and everything can all be mushed up together. That's where the new stuff comes from. So I'm very interested if anyone can point me in the right direction, though, to listen to brand new musical ideas. So it's something I'm trying to seek out at the moment. And also, what is the current standard for excellent production? That's so. Hit me up with things.
No bass line and excellent vocal production skills, as far as I could tell. But that's just pop, isn't it?
Yeah.
And no hi-hats either.
No hi-hats either. That said Steve Hillier in his retreat down in Spain there. And we were just commenting before we started the show how amazing a webcam can look when it's given the right amount of light. So Steve Hillier, of course, DJ, producer, songwriter. Do you do education stuff as well? I think you do, don't you?
I work at BIM with Matt, or actually working with Matt is a new thing that's hopefully going to be starting in a few weeks' time. I've worked at BIM for a while, and the thing that I teach there is songwriting, which I prefer to put under the umbrella of creativity more than songwriting, because it doesn't really capture everything. But yeah, we work at the same place.
Wow.
It's all right.
So I'm a bit concerned that you're going to get sunburn. I mean, if you need to dash off and if you need to dash off and get a hat or move an umbrella, that's fine. Just let us know.
I think I might do that. I think that the billions and billions of photons that are coming from this star are making the webcam look good. I'm also going to give me severe exposure.
Well, lovely to have you, though. But
it's great to be here.
Hopefully, you won't be too cooked by the time we finish the show. Anyway, a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to say NobCon is next weekend, and we are a friend of ours, Jim Hayward, who runs the Excellent Synth Memes Facebook group, is going over and is going to do some filming stuff, and we'll also be running a live blog. He'll be posting some stuff to it. But if you're going and you see anything and you want to post anything to Instagram, may I suggest that you post using the hashtag SSNobCon18, because then we can pick it up and we might well include it in the live stream for the live blog. I just wanted to post that out there. So coverage will be coming over at the weekend, so I hope sorry we couldn't have made it in person, but like I say, Jim's going to be there. If you see Jim, say hi. He's the one who looks quite a lot like Tom Cruise, as I keep telling him, although nobody else seems to see it apart from me. Maybe I've just got some kind of fixation. Anyway, right, let's get on to some interesting stuff. First of all, right, this is latest.
If you're listening to this in mono, it's just noise. In stereo,
is from Loop Pop.
it's a cool effect. But
And
in
he
quad,
explores
you're in the middle of a storm.
the idea of quadraphonic sound in various different ways.
And if that's what spatial modulation can do to noise, imagine what it can do to the rest of your music. Now,
This is
YouTube
only
doesn't
stereo,
support
but-
quad, so you probably won't get what the fuss is about by listening to this. But if you create music, you've got to try listening to or creating music with spatial motion, preferably quadraphonic.
It's a lovely piece, actually, that opening thing. It's got a lovely atmosphere. But this was a piece by Loop Pop who contacted us and said, oh, you should try it. And I don't have a quad system here, but he goes through a number of different methods. One is within the DAW. The other one is in, let me see, I listed them here. One is in the DAW, one's in Eurorack, one is using VCV Rack, which, as we know, is a sort of free environment. And the one, he talks about the idea of maybe creating some VCV patches, and as we've talked about before, maybe putting them on a Raspberry Pi, so it's a kind of dedicated spatial panning system. Obviously, you need a sound card and stuff on it, and the patch would just be running, and you would it would be headless apart from some MIDI controllers. But I wondered, this brings up an interesting question. Quadraphonic sound has been... It's been in and out, hasn't it? I mean, as of many other spatial sounds, and we're starting to see it more in like festival things and in live art installations and sort of experimental electronic gigs. But it's been in and out of favour. I mean, it started coming in, I'm in the 60s or 70s, wasn't it? Everybody was raving about quadraphonic sound, and it just seems to be always there, but I've never really tried it. And I wonder whether any of you guys had experimented with quad. I suppose it's different to 5.1, or quite similar to 5.1. Maybe I'll start with you, Gaz, because I know you do mastering stuff. So, I mean, do you ever get asked to do things either 5.1 or more importantly, quadraphonic stuff?
Very, very rarely, if ever, I'm thinking. But I mean, I've been playing around with some surroundy ideas, and I've got the Waves NX headphone system here, which allows you to have a virtual surround sound for headphones. We've talked about this before, and the thing that's really interesting about that system is that unlike other systems that have existed in the past, what's interesting with this is that it moves your head, so you actually move your head around within a surround sound environment, so you can actually go towards the speakers and back and forwards towards the speakers, and I'm really keen to get hold of a pair of those Audies, which are the headphones that
you tried those at Superproof, didn't you?
Yeah, they were incredible. Yeah, really, really good, and that's got the Waves NX built into them. But I'm actually going to I'm getting another set of monitors for the back wall in my studio, so I'll be able to do a little bit more surround sound stuff. And it's something I've always been interested in. I remember having my mind blown listening to the quadraphonic version of Dark Side of the Moon, and the On the Run track, the VCS3 thing. When you hear it in quadraphonic, it's really... It just makes a lot more sense. The whole kind of the way that the mixes and it all spins around. It sounds really cool. And that was 1973. So it still does feel quite it's still it hasn't had its day yet. It's still such a lot of effort for people to set up. I recently got hold of a Gentle Giant, like a Steven Wilson Gentle Giant thing called 3-Piece Suite, which he revisited the first 3 Gentle Giant albums in the early 70s and has done 5.1 mixes of those. And what's good about them is those albums have got some really kind of wild out there, sort of proggy kind of experimental sections. And those rendered in surround sound are really interesting. And I think this is the thing that makes... a lot of the surround sound stuff that has come out in the past, it tends to be a bit conservative. It puts a kind of audience or just little atmosphere in the rear, rather than really strong sweeping panning effects. And this Loop Pop video is really good for that, though. I mean, it really goes into lots of different applications of that. I mean, yes, specifically with more of a quadraphonic focus. Loop Pop's videos are brilliant, aren't they?
Yeah,
really
he's definitely
them.
got a style thing. Yeah, he does really good stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it is. It is that dilemma, though, isn't it? As interesting as it is, how many people
Who's going to
will
hear
have-
it?
Who's going to hear it? So, I mean, I know with like the Apple HomePods, you can make a stereo pair and that, but I doubt if anything will ever come out like HomePod will ever have an AirPlay which you can make surround sound with. Maybe it will. But I think that's the main problem. Is well, I realised as well. I remember buying a surround sound system for my living room off Gumtree. I think I paid 60 quid for it, and it was a 1,200 quid Sony rig. And you look at, I mean, I think that maybe has passed a little bit now, but the home cinema sort of boom of the early 2000s and all the surround sound systems people were getting, I think it's probably the most often sold thing when people move house.
Yeah,
They just
well,
go
it's
to rewire it all back in again, and it's just like, oh, just chuck it on Gumtree.
yeah.
And therefore, I think that is the problem. Is as a fantastic and exciting and sort of psychedelically amusing surround sound is, it just is still probably always going to be a minority thing, sadly.
Steve, am I right in thinking that vinyl was there some forms of vinyl that were done in quadraphonic? I can't wonder how that's even possible.
Yeah, I must admit I don't know how it was done, but it certainly was. At least my understanding was that on a consumer level, it did start with vinyl, and this was something that occurred to me, which was that Gaz just mentioned The Dark Side of the Moon, so one of the greatest sounded records of all time and biggest selling records, but it came out in an era where the one of the objectives for your home was to have a hi-fi, and I feel that that's gone now. I don't actually know of anyone now who has a hi-fi. Even in my own home, I have an Apple HomePod and I have a selection of Bluetooth speakers, but I don't have anything that has been designed to give me pristine fidelity. And I feel a bit that, at least on a consumer level, that was one of the selling points of quadraphonic sound, in that you could have pristine sound but coming from all around you. These days, I don't really know whether the market is there or whether the market has actually moved on to other considerations for audio, which would be convenience, quite frankly. I wander around most days with a pair of Beats headphones on because I like to look cool, but they're but they're connected to my phone via Bluetooth, and I've got Spotify, and essentially I have everything that I want from music in that package, and I'm an old man. I know, my younger people in my family, they're not even bothered about getting decent sounding headphones. They'll listen to music on their phones and be quite happy with it. Having said all of that, on the video, the results that the presenter was getting did sound really good, and it reminded me of various events that I've been to where there is quadraphonic sound. I went to see a Warp gig. It was well over a decade ago now. They had all the big Warp guys, but not Balls of Canada, doing their thing in quadraphonic sound or surround sound, and it sounded incredible. So I'm thinking, this multi-channel audio, it's for events. It's not for personal consumption. Yeah. So if you're at a club, brilliant. If you're at a festival, brilliant. If you're at an amphitheater or similar that's designed for pristine sound, that's great. For those of us who are making, I suppose, more modest music, I don't know. I don't think I've got the time.
Yeah, I take your point. I know, Matt. I don't know whether or not you put on events and stuff. I mean, is it something that's explored as part of what you do professionally in terms of the education side of thing, or is it something you've tried artistically for your own stuff or experienced?
A bit of experience in this. So, I mean, when I studied for my MA, I was doing a lot of stuff in 5.1. These were typically choir recordings, anything where you was trying to translate space into another space, essentially, and big cathedrals and churches with vocals going on obviously are fantastic. If you can record that in multi-channel audio and pump that out into your living room, sounds great. So that was kind of like the beginning for me. And then I started mixing stuff in 5.1, not necessarily quad, more 5.1, and since then I've not really, going back to like what Steve's saying, I've not really done much with this because it's never really felt like it's for the consumer at home and for the consumer who's walking from a train station to a train station and with their headphones on. It's more for an event. It's more for cinema and TV. I love that. I love going to the cinema just, sometimes just for decent sound and just be totally in the middle of all of that. That's a biggie for me. Concerts can be a little bit hit and miss depending what they are.
And where you're standing, I suppose.
Yeah, and absolutely where you're standing. There's, particularly with 5.1, there's quite a narrow field as to where you're really going to get that full perception that you're trying to get across in 5.1. I was lucky enough to see Morten Subotnick play live with his modular at the Funk House in Berlin at one of the Loop concerts, and that was just phenomenal. And I was bang in the middle of the room, and it was very immersive, sounds flying around your head. That was very, very enjoyable. I've seen rock bands who have tried to do stuff in quad, and it didn't really work for me. It was just kind of like more guitars in the back behind you as well as in front of you. So it's really got to be like, going back to what I originally saying, translating a space into another space.
Right.
I think that's when it works. And that crossover from electronic music, this Subotnick gig, where you've just got pure electronic instrumentation.
Well, the sound off the stage isn't kind of polluting the imaging of it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was wondering, why aren't there closed ear headphones? Because you imagine if you've got a pair of headphones that are closed ear, you could actually mount speakers rear, over the ear that are slightly forward and slightly backward. Surely you could make quadraphonic headphones that would work like that.
Actually, Nick, I have. This is guesswork, but I suspect there is a reason for this. What I think it is that our perception of space around us is dependent not just on where sound is coming from, but how it reflects within our own ears.
Right.
So you might not you'll get a very strange sense of space if it's coming from behind your ears here, but really for surround sound to work, it needs to exist within a space, if you know what I mean. It needs the reverberation of the room
and the reflections.
Also the fact that, that's right. So your head is moving around naturally when you're just being alive, I suppose, and that gives you a sense of space as well, which I just don't think you can get from headphones.
But that's what that Wave NX. Well, that Wave NX sort of takes into account that with the head tracking, as your head moves around, the speakers stay in the same place, and it is a pretty profound experience. And in the, I've had things in the past like the VRM box, which Focusrite thing, but if you moved your head around, you moved the whole room around as you moved your head. But with these head tracking things, you move your head around and it really does give you the sense of space. It's quite interesting. Wow. And it did make me wonder, as this conversation was progressing, whether now that Audi's have released those headphones, they're less than £400. So it makes me wonder whether that technology, like I guess a Bluetooth head tracking thing is probably quite reasonably cheap technology to implement these days compared to previously. So I wonder if we will get another wave of surround sound headphones coming out with this. Maybe Waves will license it to sort of more consumer level. But I was going to say, is it
Mobius? Is it the Audi's Mobius?
That's it. Audi's, and I mean, it's interesting that they're marketing them very, very much towards like the kind of gamer market.
Yeah, I suppose that's realistic because the 3D render of audio is something that But do you think it's perhaps more fun to make than it is to listen to?
I think that covers most music, doesn't it?
Maybe.
I think there is an aspect of pardon the phrase, but boys with toys with this. I do, to an extent. I think we're living in a time where music for consumers is about convenience over audio quality.
Yeah.
And I think that the leap that is required to go from 2 speakers to 4, I don't see. Well, I actually don't know anyone who's done it. quite
It's
frankly.
it's a lot of
that's just me.
it is a lot of hassle to do. I suppose what we need is surround sound wireless systems that are really easy to set up. So you're just going to go one there, and that's it, and you're done. But then you get a latency, and it's all becomes a little bit less.
But there is one thing that I don't think anyone's mentioned so far, which is that most of us have got two ears, and we're really well served by stereo. I think this is why it's survived for so long. And if there was somehow some way of matching the convenience of stereo and getting the immersive experience of surround sound in some way, then that would be an incredible thing. I at this point in time, I think it's all about convenience.
Yeah, just on that point of convenience as well. I think one of the easiest things to do for stereo, if you do want to get some of this kind of spatialization within a stereo mix, is re-recording stuff out using a binaural dummy head. I've done that before, where it might be some percussion elements and they can suddenly appear like they're playing behind you. I've certainly heard it on some of the new records. John Hopkins' latest album, for example, has got some binaural stuff going on in there. The first time I heard it, I was on a train and I was convinced there was someone behind me clattering about, and I had to turn around, and then you only realize, oh, this is actually embedded in the recording. So binaural is really good. There's a great clip on YouTube. People should go check this out after the podcast, but it's called the what is it called? The Demon Barber or something. It's someone cutting your hair with a pair of scissors, recorded in binaural, and it's as though they are right by your ears, and it feels like they're going to take your ears off with the scissors. It's
that sounds like horror, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I do check out Luke Pop's video. It's a great one, and some of the questions he brings up, and his stuff is really good. And I think I don't think he needs any assistance. He's doing great in terms of views and stuff, but he does make great stuff. So well worth watching. Okay, let's have a look. Oh yeah, this was the other bit of news. Did you see this? The Dave Smith rebrands as Sequential, which is a kind of weird twist, isn't it? I wonder about this. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? So, not sequential circuits, sequential. So apparently it coincides with the 40th anniversary of the Prophet 5, and the original Sequential Circuits Inc. was formed in 1974, in fact. So yeah, it's quite an interesting idea. That they're going to rebrand, and always a tricky business, but I suppose most people would kind of maybe associate Dave Smith with that other brand, and perhaps it's also, I wonder if it's a sort of distance of like, I don't know how old Dave is, but he must be getting older and maybe thinking, actually I want to step back from this and it not be tied to just my name as well. I think there's probably a couple of things about this.
Yeah.
That is actually what I was going to mention, that it's very difficult to retire if your company has your name in the name, if you know what I mean. So like, I don't know how old Dave Smith is, but I'm sure he's thinking of retiring. And so Dave Smith's instruments without Dave Smith, it's just not the same thing. I also think actually Sequential is it's a cooler name. And one thing that's for certain is that it's a cooler font. If you go back to that photograph that we had, for those of you out there in the world who are font nerds like me, that font they use there is called Stop. And it's I think it's available for free on the internet now, but it was around in the late 70s and early 80s, and I was obsessed with it. So beyond the ability for Dave to retire, it's good to see that thing come back. There is just maybe the sun's getting to me now. There is just one other thing that I'd like to mention about this. It's often advice that's given to new entrepreneurs or people starting out their company, that the thing that you don't want is your name above the door. And the reason is that if it's your name above the door, firstly you can't sell because you'd have to sell yourself as well, which defeats the project of selling your company. But also you can never walk away in any way, shape or form. It's dependent on you being there. Yeah. And I mention this to young musicians as well, that if you start your career using your own name, in terms of branding, you've got nowhere to go. It's just you, Steve Hillier, Whereas if you started as a brand name or some sort of project name, you can always pull your own name out later if required. If you think of Björk, she had the sugar cubes and then she became Björk. But if she had started with Björk, which actually thinking about that's a bad example because she did at the age of 12. But if you started with your own Christian name, it's very hard to rebrand from your name. So I would just, for the younger musicians who are listening here are thinking about this kind of things, I've just avoid using your own name, just like Dave Smith is doing here.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because there was a whole slew. I mean, Tom Oberheim, Robert Moog, you know, all people who used their names for their companies and got into all sorts of horrible sort of commercial, you know, mess and unpleasantness where people bought the assets of the company when perhaps it was failing, you know, in lean years, and they end up in these sort of ridiculous situations where they don't have the rights to use their own names, which is kind of it's never a good place to go. But yeah, I think. What do you think, Gaz? Sequential. It looks cooler on the back of a keyboard. And Dave Smith Instruments is written in sort of Comic Sans, which I think is not so great.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I didn't know that font is called. What did you say? It's called Stop.
Stop.
The font.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah, great. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, though. I mean, I do feel that he does. I think he quotes, doesn't he, in that article that he feels that the name puts too much emphasis on him, and he's working with a team of people, and he wants the name to be more reflective of it being a team effort as well, which I guess you know, I'm sure it is. But I think it was quite a nice story as well, wasn't it? The guy from Yamaha.
I've got it. Well, Roland's founder, Kakahashi, sort of, because Yamaha ended up owning it and they didn't do anything with it. And I think Roland was founder. One of the things that he did before he stepped down was kind of, he said he wanted to return the sequential name to Dave Smith in a gesture of goodwill. And it said, there's a quote here, once Kakahashi-san and Yamaha enabled us to reacquire the sequential name, I knew we'd fully adopt it again when the time was right. And that time, it's a very unusual act of benevolence in the world of corporate business, though, isn't it?
It is. But and I wondered whether that was in part because of the terrific amount of influence Dave had on the creation of MIDI in the very first place. Really, it just seems seems like a very respectful, honourable thing. Yeah, lovely. I think it's a good story, and I hope sequential flourish. Why? I mean, it probably makes sense to leave it without the circuits bit. Although I sort of miss the circuits bit.
Yeah, SCI Inc.
Quite cool.
You know, I suppose so. Sequential Inc. I don't know. Look, but yes, Matthew looks better on the back of a keyboard, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when Dave came back on the scene and he launched, I think it was the Evolver was his first product launch when he came back out, and Dave Smith's Instruments. And at that point, I thought, hang on a minute, why isn't this sequential? What's going on here? And then, of course, there was the whole thing with the name. Sequential is a really cool name, actually. I just had a quick Google just to see if anyone was putting out music under that name, and there is indeed. There's a band called Sequential. That's a great name, I think, for a group. And spot on what Steve was saying there about, you know, picking a name. It's something beyond your name. Something I've recently been going through. I had to decide whether to go with my own name just on new releases that are coming out on Fat Cat, or whether to change it completely. And, you know, I spent a good week sat at the kitchen table pretty much scribbling down names, and I couldn't think of anything in the end. And I realized that I'd already had, you know, I've got a bit of YouTube going on, and I've already got some releases under my old name, and I've got releases out on previous names as well, weirder names. So I just kind of went with it in the end. I got so fed up of thinking about a name, I just went with my own name in the end.
Yeah, it's funny that the idea of naming things. I mean, when I did the EP that I released in July or whatever, I just thought I'm going to do it today because I was thinking I'd get more tracks together, and then on the day I just went, oh, sod it, I'm going to do it now. And so I literally just the first thing that came into my head for a name, I did that, and then I just, you know, did some artwork, and that was it. And I like I like, you know, I didn't think about it very much, and sometimes maybe instinctive stuff. It's got a better fairy tale story about it, hasn't it, when you do that? I mean, not that I'm in any way competing in that kind of league, but yeah.
There is something else that I just want to mention to everybody here to bear in mind. This is something that's affected me recently. I don't want to talk about my own story here, but if you're starting to get somewhere with your music, you should trademark your name, or to be more specific, you should register your name as a trademark. What that means is that if you've got a certain amount of activity on social media, whatever, you can make an argument that your band name belongs to you. However, it's not the same as registering it. And so it's a process, it costs money, but what it means is nobody else for a period of time, it's 10 years, I think, it might be 20, but I think it's 10, at least in the UK. Nobody else can use that name. And that could be really important if you've spent a lot of time putting, marketing out there, doing your social media, putting out tunes. Just consider sorting out a trademark. It's something that anybody could do just online, essentially, but it does cost money.
Don't you have to do that per territory, though? And that's when it gets costly.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
You have to do it. I must admit, I don't
total
know
protection.
You can do a protection for the UK on its own. You can do a protection for the EU. You can do a protection for the US. And there's a few treaties that enable them to be sort of streamed out, if you know what I mean, to other territories. It does cost money. I would recommend don't worry about the Far East because they don't worry about copyright, so you shouldn't either. But if you're intending to do work in the US or in the like places like Australia and New Zealand, and certainly in Europe, register the trademark. At that point, when you're doing well enough to justify it, I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's good. I seem to remember looking into that, and if it's trademark registration. It might have been a patent. I can't remember. But it was like 600 quid a territory, which seems is a lot of money. Maybe it's different in for that. Yeah, I
can tell you it costs about £200 for the UK, and it's similar for the EU wide. I've patents. I don't really have any.
Yeah, no, that's different, isn't it? Yeah, that is different.
Yeah, it is.
I was getting them messed up. Anyway, yes, Dave Smith is now sequential, and that's all jolly good news. I'm just going to interject with a little message from iZotope.
I'm feeling.
This is, of course, Vocal Synth 2, which is iZotope's brilliant new vocal processing suite, Biovox, which vocal tract modeling, vocoder, new improved bands, new GUI, new effects, TalkBox, lots of things, lots of harmonization, pitch correction. Like I say, vocal tract is a really nifty thing that you can do with vocals, where you can take it to, if the oo or the e isn't pronounced enough, you can nudge it even more in that direction so it becomes clearer. If you want to check out iZotope's Vocal Synth 2, which has got all new effects, and the effects are reorderable, great thing for processing. You can also have MIDI input for vocoder bands, lots of great stuff. iZotope.com/vocalsynth, and you get the usual 10-day free demo, and it's well worth checking out. There's lots of other stuff going on the website for tutorials and things. And we've got a competition for this week. We're looking for the hashtag textural vocals and the hashtag VocalSynth2. This is a Twitter competition. So the hashtag textural vocals, one word, and the hashtag VocalSynth2 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. Enter that into a Twitter tweet, and we will be able to collect them all at the end of the week and pick a winner from all the entries. And we thank you for sponsoring the prize this week, iZotope, very much appreciated. And we have a winner from last week's show. Last week's show is from somebody called @CFSalvo. Another week, another try, and they actually got picked. So sometimes, bizarrely, it works out like that. I always, when I'm counting them up, I think, oh, it'd be great if that one won, but I always do a random number generator. So I saw this one and I thought, I wonder if that gets it. It would be quite poetic, and they did. Another week, another try from CFSalvo. So @CFSalvo, if you're listening or watching, then do get in touch and we'll get them to our friends at iZotope to pass on a copy of Vocal Synth for you. Okay, what's next? Oh yeah, some new. Let's go. Hold on. Let's maybe get this one. Oh yeah, I like the look of this. Right, this is a new Kickstarter that's just happening.
We are the SMEM. This is the Swiss Museum and Center for Electronic Music Instruments in Fribourg, Switzerland. We are here at our warehouse in the old beer factory, and as you can see,
just a few
we have a lot
synths.
of wonderful and rare instruments covering more than 70 years of sonic innovation. You will find around 1,000 synthesizers and more than 5,000 other objects. FX, microphones, organs, tape echoes, drum machines, and toys you've probably never heard of. We are a living archive. We want these instruments to be played and heard, so we decided to create the Playroom.
So I won't play the whole video, but the Playroom is essentially a kind of a sub-studio of this Swiss museum, which they'll have sort of 50 things in that you can book time in. You can go in, you can use it, you can just play with them, you can record it, you can film, and they'll change it over every sort of month. So you get a completely new set of instruments in there from their massive 1,000 instrument. And the thing that really kind of blew my mind is that photo there, which has been doing the rounds on various things, and that is, I guess, one row of the synths they have. This is the warehouse that they would be taking these from, and it just looks like such a great idea. And it's in Freiburg, which is in Switzerland, and I'm just trying to remember what this has all started with a guy called Clemens Niklaus Trenkel, who for more than 35 years collected synthesizers, keyboards, organs, studio effects, and basically donated them to this facility. And now there are obviously lots of curators. I mean, who wouldn't want to be involved in that, probably? And I just think, what a great idea. If I can find the Kickstarter, what they're doing this really good idea. So what they're doing is, you can pay, you pledge certain amounts, and some are just t-shirts and some things, but some get you kind of like 4 days in the room with your synth, or do you know what I mean? You get all this time that you could spend. So I mean, you could actually, it's going to have recording facilities and whatnot. It just seems like it's like a dream thing if you've got the time. And I imagine there's lots of people who are involved in the industry that we are. It's spoken with reverent tones and hushed tones. Have you been there? And I know there's probably a few people have been. Have you ever heard of this place, Steve? I mean, it seems like a kind of playground is too small a word to use.
No, it does sound, it looks absolutely extraordinary. I remember a few years ago going around to the guy who services my synths house, and he had 4 Prophet 5s on the side. He had a Jupiter 8, just a whole room full of synthesizers, and I was talking about that for days. This is a man in his 40s, and so looking at this thing, it looks absolutely extraordinary. And then I was thinking, okay, so what would actually happen if I went in there? And I think I would be just overwhelmed by choice. By choice. It would be lovely to look at these things, but I ultimately don't know what I would do. And it reminded me of something that I had to do a few years ago, which was to essentially reduce the amount of instruments that I work with. What I wanted to concentrate on was 1 or 2 and know them, the instruments I know really well, and get the best I can from those, because I was realizing that in order to compete in the modern music environment, your efficiency has to be really high. Your turnover of music has to be exceptionally fast. And what I didn't want to do is to be, stuck with 1,000 different choices. So what I did for a project that's going to be coming out hopefully in October, I keep saying that, but whatever, was reduce my amount of synths down to 2. Which was a Korg Monopoly, which I've had since I was a child, and a Yamaha DX100, which I've had since I was a teenager, and worked with that. And it's been liberating. So not to take anything away from these guys, because I'm definitely going to go there, right? But in terms of making music, for me, it really is less is more. So I'm going to go there and take photos and do the music making when I get home.
Okay, well, I had a question. One of the questions was, which synth do you think you would want to go to first, given the choice? Assuming, I mean, the one thing I also think is, so you go to this place, everybody's, presumably there are curators and stuff, and then suddenly, it's like, okay, here it is, and then there's a massive performance pressure, isn't there? Right, now I've got to do something that I'm not embarrassed about in front of all of these kind of people who've seen it all, maybe know a lot about these instruments, and it could be terminally, it could actually crush you creatively quite easily.
And you know that every single person who works in that is watching you, waiting for you to go straight to the filter. That's it. And they'll have bets, and it'll be in Swiss francs, and they'll make a fortune whilst you look like an idiot. The synthesizer I'll go for, I'd like to look at an original ARP Odyssey with the Moog style filter. I've got an original Odyssey, but it's a Mark III, and I love it. But I've never tried one of the originals. I'd like to do that. That's
a good one. I know, Steve, will you be making a pilgrimage to Switzerland the next time you're in Europe?
Oh, me?
Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, yeah. I'll certainly be going there. I think we should say big thank you to these people, really. I'm so glad that someone's gone and done this. I think this is an important thing. And now it's done, I can kind of sleep better at night, knowing that it's happening as well. You know, for someone to take this on, I was listening to a podcast the other day where someone was talking about this very thing, and I thought that would be such a great idea if somebody did this, and hey presto, there it is. So happy days. Would I go there? Absolutely. What would I do when I get there? I think for me, one of the things on the Kickstarter is the artist residency, which is I think £1,800 to do 4 days artist residency there, and that's what I'd go and do. I'd spend 4 days. I would probably do every single hour. I'd eat there, I'd sleep there, and I would just be pulling all sorts of stuff out and just try and
there we go.
create an album essentially, and be inspired by the various bits of equipment that I'm using.
You also get help with hotel accommodations and get shown around their favourite places in Freiburg. So yeah, that sounds like a deal, doesn't it? What that would be a kind of a city, darling. We're going on a city break to Freiburg.
That's what I was just going to say. How many people are going to be saying that? Going, oh, I've always fancied Switzerland. Freiburg looks nice. When you get there, oh, guess what I found? God. Yeah, but it's cool, isn't it? It's very cool. It does remind me a little bit of it's not there anymore, but EMIS in Bristol, the upstairs, the hallowed upstairs in EMIS. Did you ever go there?
Oh,
mate?
yeah, I did, yeah, once.
It's not. He's moved there. He's moved. It was an old schoolhouse, and upstairs it wasn't open to the public, but you had to kind of you had to apply for permission to go up and have a look there. And there was loads of stuff up there. I mean, not on this scale, but God, this looks fun. Someone just beat me to it in the chat room though. About what I would pick, and assuming that they had one there and it's actually not a vintage synth, it's a newish synth, but the Nifonium, like Nifonium or whatever it's called. Do you remember that thing? That all valve. Oh, it's amazing. And it's still possibly my favorite synth demo I've ever heard, actually. It's fantastic. It's that really kind of weirdy looking it's all valves and little kind of weird
I'm just
joystick.
looking. This doesn't look like it.
Nifonium.
Cniphonium, yeah. I'm just trying to find. I've got it here, but what is?
Oh,
is that it?
That's it.
Oh look,
yeah.
It's a funky worm.
Like the Korg
PS3300.
PS3300.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's about 10,000 quid, I think, to buy. It's not, it's one of those things. If I ever became stupidly rich for some crazy reason, that's what I would get. That is definitely my dream synth, that thing.
I'm just
So I wonder.
So I wonder if they've got one. I don't know. Well, they've got loads of stretch goals in the Kickstarter, which means they would buy more instruments to kind of, if they raise what are they looking to raise? It's not an incredible amount of money. They're looking to raise. What is it? 38 grand. And they've got about just under about a third of the way there, I think. So, and they've still got 28 days to go. So, I mean, I think I was going to put
Are they running it as a business or as a charity?
I would imagine it would be. Well, I mean, Swiss are fairly canny when it comes to money, so I'd probably whichever makes the most financial sense. I would imagine. I mean, that's a generalisation, but let's not forget there are a number of banks in Switzerland that would probably advise them on which was the best way to go. I'm sure. I'm just trying to think what I would go for. Actually, I can't. I quite like to. I think. That's a difficult. I'm gonna have to think about that a bit more. So you go for the Nifonium then, would you?
Yep. Definitely.
I think I'd go with something without keys, because I'm not a keys player. So something, I don't know, like a VCS3 or something like that. Anything without keys on it, and maybe a really interesting sequencer within it. That's what I'd probably pull out straight away.
I'm just trying to think what I would go for. I can't really think of anything that I really want to get my hands. I mean, I really enjoy playing a CS80, but I mean, I suppose you can still. I mean, Dave's got one of those. I mean, Dave's not got a synth museum, but he's got a synth studio, which has got, I don't know how many synths they've got in it. It's nothing approaching that number, but I mean, it's a similar experience, and they have people showing up who kind of play on that at their place as well. So I suppose it's similar. I can't think what I'm gravitating towards really.
You're a great player, though.
Yamaha PSS. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Yamaha
was just
PSS.
Yeah.
SK1.
So
A Casio SK1 maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I wonder
Well,
if
they
they've
have to
got a
have one there.
guitar.
They have to have one there. They have to have an SK1. It is a very, very historical and important instrument. So
Well,
they
that's
have to
true.
have
I
one if
mean,
they
yeah,
haven't got one. Yeah.
I would agree with you. They might well do. I know
And a
Steve
Yamaha
has-
DJX.
I've got a DJX actually, and I played it. I
Yeah,
did play the.
classic.
Although the problem I've got is my there's something wrong with one of the sensors. So every time you spin the wheel, it resets and just reboots and kills the pattern.
Oh God, yeah, we used to use one in the band, and like there was a horrible in its default thing is if you turn it off and turn it back on, it goes. You probably recognise that with the DJX. It goes. It kind of defaults into like a kind of auto accompany sort of thing. And
It's good though.
Well, we did a gig once and the power came out and it plugged back on and suddenly it started doing that in the middle of the song. So the guitarist, keyboard player in my band, he booted the keyboard off the DJX. He booted it off the stage, went flying off the stage, landed like knobs and keys down on the dance floor. And was absolutely fine.
That is surprising.
Built like a toy. Built like a toy.
But well, I've got the one which is just the box. I mean, I remember I try to remember. I think it was Black Cherry, Gold Flat Black Cherry. I sampled all of the drum sounds. There are lots of drum sounds in there actually, and we used quite a lot of those. I haven't told anybody
Whoa,
that.
Confession.
Well, I used quite a lot of them. I don't think
The
they were
Gold Flat
particularly.
DJX.
They weren't choices, but they weren't sort of choices made by them. It was choices made by me when I was doing the beats. I know, but it's a great idea, and I think it's well worth supporting.
But Nick, do they have a keytar in there? That is
They
the
have to
question.
have at least one.
They've got to, otherwise the place has got to be closed straight away.
You could use that. That's a very Swiss-looking one. You could use that for churning butter as well. By
I'd
the looks of
actually
it.
donate this to them. If I go over there, I'm going to donate this to them. They can have this
Nice.
for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I think that if they haven't got one, they should probably have them. We did do a thing about keytars, didn't we, a few weeks ago? And it was somebody contacted me. I forget the details of it. Somebody contacted me. People got really upset of these various keytar groups on Facebook. They got really upset that we were sort of dissing the notion of a keytar, and it was kind of like, oh well, it wasn't.
I had people getting in touch with me to thank me for sticking up for the guitar as well. So yes, guitar.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I know, Steve. You've succumbed to the sun. There, you're looking a bit FBI now.
Well, I was sort of thinking earlier on, if I start just laughing to myself, it's probably because I'm getting exposure. So I looked at the stream, the live chat on YouTube, and a few people were saying, "Oh, Steve's going a bit red," and Steve's talking about taking pictures in this place rather than playing the six. Yeah, maybe I am. There is something wrong here. So now here's my hat.
The wind's picking up. I guess that must be. What's the name of the local wind there? I like to find out about the local winds in various areas. What's it called? Is it the Mistral or one of those?
I'm afraid I don't know. I'm a typical Brit round here. I only speak in English and fake Russian. So
okay. Well, that was actually came up with a pub quiz that I came up with. Is how many winds can you name? Name 10 winds. It's quite difficult. But anyway, that's really got nothing to do with podcasts whatsoever. Anyway, the Playroom sounds really cool, and it looks like they're going to make their Kickstarter. I certainly hope so. And if we can, put any more people in their direction, then go for it, because I think it's a very worthy thing. I mean, you would worry about having a place like that. What the insurance would be, and having them all in one place is quite scary, isn't it?
So
the risk.
Part of the budget should go on. Part of the budget should go on sort of not letting Deep Purple go and record there. I think they've got a bad history of recording in Switzerland.
Well, it's not. At least it's not based on the Lake Geneva shoreline, anyway, is it? That's the main thing. Yeah.
Just a couple of observations before we move on. It really reminds me of Svalbard. Have you guys heard of that place? It's a seed bank that's up way beyond the Arctic Circle. I think it's Norwegian or Swedish. Yeah, that's right. It reminds me of that. And being in Switzerland, it might survive a nuclear war, which would be nice. Just like the seeds in Svalbard. The other thing is, I wonder how long it will be before we get a set of sample libraries coming from this place.
Well, that would make sense.
It would, wouldn't it? Just imagine if there was a sample library that covered every instrument in that place, and it was sold in Swiss francs.
Yeah, it could
I wonder
certainly
if-
help keep the place going.
I wonder if that
Yeah.
would be covered in if you could do an artist residence and basically just sample all of them, or whether that's a different deal you'd have to do. I think you'd probably have to talk to the bankers. They'd be in charge of that sort of particular thing there.
I think we should do a Sonic State weekend trip out there.
Oh, that would
Yeah.
be fun, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that
Let's
be
do
fun?
it.
What a great idea!
Yeah.
Stretch goal.
Well, I'll tell you what. When we've got enough sponsors for the podcast to fund it, we will absolutely. Maybe we should do it as a Kickstarter, our own Kickstarter.
Shall
Send
we?
us all out. Send us all out to Switzerland for a laugh. Excellent. Yeah.
And then back to Steve's place out there for
Yeah, that sounds perfect. We'll do the show right there.
just
Yeah,
to
that's
relax.
a great.
By all means.
That's a great
By all
idea.
means.
What a great idea. Yeah, I'm 100% behind you on that one. Okay, there was one other thing, which was new oscillators for the Prologue. Do you remember there was this? In fact, I think I've got one somewhere. There was the development board that was given out to a load of developers at Superbooth, which was basically a single oscillator, the digital oscillator for the Korg Prologue, and the idea being that they would encourage developers to do their own oscillators. And there were a couple here. Let me see if I've got some sounds. This one is, I think, is this Blinds? Yeah, this is Blinds. So this is by a chap called. Hold on, I've got it. Edouard Digital. It's a versatile two-mode oscillator with Meta PWM engine, obviously great interest to me, and 101 waveforms. You can get it for €39, and you just load it in, and it gives you an additional one. And there's also this one, which is super. This is multiple waves. FM Monster, Organism, and Superwave, 20 quid each, and the other one's €39, 40 for a bundle all each. And you could just load them into your Prologue, and you've essentially got like this sort of additional synthesis engine, which is a really neat idea because they opened it up as this sort of open sourced. Wasn't quite open source, was it? You had to have the dev board, but the dev board is sort of next to nothing, and I think you have to follow. So it gets included in firmware updates, and then you can load it in via the software editor that Prologue develop. I just wonder how many more of these sort of things would go on, because it's quite a democratic concept in many ways. Anybody care to? Has anyone tried a Prologue? Whoops.
I haven't tried a Prologue, but we did kind of touch on this sort of last week when we was talking about this democracy of I think it was Raspberry Pis, wasn't it? And being able to put your own things into that and make it what you want from it. So I guess there's some of that going on here, and this also. I was going to say this sort of reminds me of like the Nord concept back in the day, where you could do a lot of that within that. It was like the first sort of modular synthesizer made out of software, wasn't it? And you could change all your waveforms, and I think you could create your own. And then I was first made really aware of this when I was talking about the DSI, the Dave Smith Evolver, and that came with a waveform editor, and you could chuck your own waveforms into. And that was a way of doing that. So I'm really glad to see this sort of thing happening again. And so you guys have made some as well, which sound really great.
Sorry.
I think you guys have made some as well, haven't you?
So we made some Max for Live synths.
Yes,
Ableton
that's
racks,
right.
but not the thing about this board is I think it served two purposes. I think obviously one of the reasons was because it has to be done in C++. It's a proper sort of DSP coding scenario, and I think part of it was perhaps for Korg to just see who's out there doing really smart things, and it might be that they would then maybe want to work with these people if they came up with some really interesting concepts. I mean, that could be a possibility as well. I don't know, Steve. What do you think? Have you tried a Prologue? And we were supposed to get one for review, and they just never sent it. And they said it's 2 months ago, and it just never arrived. So.
I've been a lifelong fan of Korg products, and no, but on this occasion, no, I haven't tried a Prologue. I do like this concept, though. The idea that you can, get in and program extra software for existing hardware, I think is a great idea. So I fully support that. However, although it's been a long time since I've done any coding, I think that anyone who is doing coding for this needs to read the terms carefully. I think it's kind of important that if you're making software that goes into a proprietary piece of hardware, who owns that software?
Oh, you can sell. You sell the code yourself. These oscillators are third party. You can buy them from those people. It's not via Korg.
Terrific. Well, that's really good. That was my only concern, and it was nothing to do with Korg. It's just simply my own ignorance that I'm really mentioning. But there is a big thing I'd like to mention, something that I really like about this concept, which is that I'm so glad that after what seems like 40 years, that we're not all still focusing on the quality of filters in DSP. I do feel like we've cracked it. Do you know what I mean? I feel that the digital filters that we have now, they sound really good, and it seems like it's the sound generation that we need to turn our attentions to. And so this is a great move forward. As I think everybody who watches this knows, I'm a big fan of Extra Records Serum, where they seem to have put a lot of their focus on great sounding oscillators and the ability to create your own wavetables within that software. So I think this is a great way forward, and maybe I should get back into C++. It's been a long time.
Did you use the code? Have you done that? I've never done that. Oh,
yeah, right. Where I started off in music was I used to write Z80 code, which was absolutely. I mean, it was a bit
that's
of a
ones
mad
and zeros
thing.
practically, isn't it? That's like machine code. Jesus.
Yeah, but that's exactly what it was, and that's. I mean, I had a lot of time by myself in my childhood. Clearly, I just bought myself an instruction manual and worked out how to do it. But that was a really long time ago. And then I got into HTML and C++ and the few sort of scripting languages. But then, girls came along, and so did the music career, and I kind of stopped doing that. I should get back into it, basically. Right. And girls.
I haven't. I've never done C++ stuff. Yeah, Gaz.
The blinds, though, when I was reading about it, I was thinking, God, this sounds like Dove Audio's WOTF oscillator, and then it goes on to sort of say it.
Yeah.
It seemed. Yeah. I mean, and it did kind of pose an interesting kind of issue there. That I mean, I don't even know if the Dove Audio is shipping yet. I mean, that was just a fairly recently completed Kickstarter campaign, a very innovative. Eurorack. Albeit Eurorack module of this idea of having two waveforms that you can essentially create a window between one to the other, and Blinds goes on to pretty much use exactly the same method. I think even Says is inspired by it, and I just kind of thought, ooh, is that a little bit too soon? Is that a little bit immoral to take someone's idea and to then copy it and then sell it?
Window
trans. We've seen that concept before, have we? Really, before that came out with Jove.
I don't know. I didn't. Yeah, no, I've just seen that it was first introduced in modular equipment by Dove with their window transform function module. Yeah,
so it just kind of seems a little bit too soon.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I mean, I don't know how the law or the kind of copyright or anything works. I mean, because I guess they are essentially different people. Maybe who own a Prologue wouldn't necessarily be the same person to own a Eurorack.
Well,
I guess a certain amount will. Who knows? But it just seems just a little bit dodgy.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about that. I did look at it and I thought, oh, that's similar, but I didn't. I obviously read that part. But yeah, that's a fair point. It's a fair point. But I suppose, I mean, I guess if we take it back to the original point, which is that, it allows people to experiment with new oscillators. I don't know how far you could go, because it's coding. You've got a tiny, something like 256K of, it's really small workspace, because it's very much sandboxed as a separate thing in the Prologue. It's not part of the main synth OS. It integrates in as its own sort of little tiny kind of code area, I suppose. But you can download them. They're not expensive, and I guess if you've got a Prologue, check it out. And a lot of people are saying, that they really dig their Prologues, and I think I'm just trying to think if I haven't played one that much, but maybe sometime.
I wonder how long that transfer takes to load up these new waveforms. Do you know?
No, I don't. But I mean, I think. I don't know if it replaces something that's already in there, or whether it just fills an empty slot. That'd be an interesting thing to know. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great. I don't know if you would be able to save that then almost like as a preset, so you could just jump between these.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Really useful. I mean,
That's-
my approach
yeah.
nowadays is what I have behind me is pretty much it in terms of synths in here, and they've been purchased because they've all got different waveforms and types of synthesis within them. You know, I've got something, you know, very basic oscillators through to FM craziness, and just so I can literally get a sound quickly from one or the other. So I guess they're offering this ability there and expanding that within the Prologue, but I just wonder how quickly and how efficient that is.
Yeah, no,
to
I
do.
don't know. I don't know. That's a good point. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of our topics, at least. So, but before we go, I just wanted to reiterate that we've got the NobCon live blog from NobCon in Chicago next weekend. Jim Hayward will be posting some video from there and occasional photographs. And if you're there and you want to post anything and you want us to pick it up, if you give it the hashtag SSNobCon18, not very snappy, but I couldn't really come up with anything else that didn't kind of not have the information. So SSNobCon18, if you tag it with that, we'll keep an eye out, a search for that. We may well whack it into the live blog and it will show up on the Sonic State live blog page. And that's it for this week, I suppose. Yes. I'm just trying to think if I had anything more to say. I suppose I did not. So I don't know. Gaz, have you got anything to add before we go?
I've been, I mean, Spectrasonics Omnisphere 2.5 is now officially out, and I've been playing around with my Sledge, which is something I was really pleased about, because that was something that Eric promised that he would implement for me, and has done with absolutely terrific results. And what I've realized, which is really special, and it's only actually since being able to play with it that I've kind of come to realize this, is that it's the way they've done it for all the hardware. So just to reiterate, if anyone doesn't know what they've done, the latest,
the hardware
latest
synth
version of
mappings,
Omnisphere, synth mappings, which is so much more than just simply like a MIDI mapping thing. It's much more sort of deeper embedded into the software. But what's quite interesting is that for all of the hardware synths that they've mapped, they've essentially created a virtual version of that, which we did know about. But I think what's quite interesting is that if like I'm playing on the Sledge and then call up like I did with some sub 37 patches, and then suddenly, you know, you're playing like a sub 37 on the Sledge, but it's like playing a synth but with the Sledge interface. So as soon as you then start playing, well, certain parameters,
they won't be mapped, I suppose, would they? But not all of them will be mapped.
No, they still are. Everything jumps to what the Sledge mapping is. So
interchangeable.
No matter what patch, no matter what patch you call up out the whole of Omnisphere, as soon as you sort of change a parameter on the Sledge, you've got the Sledge interface for it, and it's sort of it's really interesting. Like, just turn your Sledge into a sub 37, or change. I was playing with a Jupiter 8 as well, you know, and but what does happen though is that if you do things like if you change the filter, it changes the filter of whatever the patch is. But if I was to like change the filter type from a 12 dB, there's a little switch that'll change it from a 12 dB to 24 dB, or which high pass, band pass, whatever, low pass. As soon as you press any of those switches, then it switches out the filter for the ones that they've designated for the Sledge mapping. So and similarly, if I was just to change like the oscillators and went to the wave table, or change the wavetable knob, then I start changing the wavetables as per mapping of the Sledge, whereas everything else remains the same as the patch that you've just loaded in.
Oh, interesting.
So it's it's really interesting. It's sort of like you kind of go, okay, this is a new paradigm. We've not experienced anything like this before. As I say, a lot of people still kind of think it's just a version of like AutoMap or something like that. It's really not. And it's something I've mentioned about before, that because it supports all of the Roland boutiques. Well, each one of those boutiques then becomes like a bespoke controller for Omnisphere, and like to go from one boutique to another boutique, and that same sort of thing applies then. It's a really interesting I mean, I think you can only have it, you know, it won't jump. If you were to sort of be playing on one of the boutiques and then change, and then started playing
another boutique. I think you'd have to go and change the hardware designation to
Right,
the
yeah,
specific
okay, I see, right.
boutique that it is. But but I mean, for those who haven't experienced it, seriously, have a look at it, because it is it's definitely something that. Well, Eric said one of the goals was to make Omnisphere feel like a hardware instrument, and they certainly achieved that. But it also is, I mean, in my case, using it with the Sledge it's made the Sledge feel like this infinity synth now.
And I've always thought, when I remember I reviewed it, I just thought that I always wanted to keep one hanging around because it's just a great synth interface. But yeah, thanks for that, guys.
That's why I was saying to Eric, because Eric was going, "Oh, the Sledge, I hadn't really thought about that." I go, "Yeah, look, it's got the best. It's so huge. It's absolutely, it's almost comically large. The interface, but yeah, it works really well."
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that bit of insight. So I think we're probably going to wrap things up now. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. I guess term started. You said you were going on holiday, though, so the students get back, and is it like those in service days at the end of the holidays where all the parents go, how come you're having a holiday now? How come we have to have extra time? But I mean, it's not. I'm sure you deserve it.
Yeah, they don't actually come back. We don't actually start till October. So
okay.
I've got a little while yet. So this gives me a time to take a week out and just kind of reset. I actually come back the day before graduation, which we do at the Brighton Dome. So I'll be coming straight back with the hat and gown on and straight onto the stage with the students reading out their names, which is a great day. I love that day. I get to meet all their family as well and what have you. So I've got a couple of days basically in here before I go off on holiday. To play with some new kit. I've just got a new module came called the Zadar, which is this you can't really see it, but it's 4 channels of envelopes, but it's complex envelopes. You can change all the waveforms, and it's
cool.
Very interesting. So I'm going to have a little play with that before I go away, basically. But
a few more tracks. You're welcome, Matthew. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks again.
And Steve, thank you for joining us as well, and for risking your skin for the sake of the show. It's been much appreciated.
I have to say, I do feel strange.
It must be sangria time, surely.
I think so. Claire, who's here with me, passed this to me, which I would recommend to anybody who's going on holiday. I don't know if you can see that.
Factor 50.
Yeah.
But
put it on at the start of the day.
Yeah, I must admit, if you want a top tip, I use Ryman P20, which is waterproof. That's really good, and it doesn't come off. And that lasts, I think, 8 or 10 hours. And it's not greasy, so you just have to sit around for 20 minutes while it sets or dries or whatever it is. But anyway, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, as ever. And and you can see the sun starting to come down now, which is the shadows are creeping longer.
Yeah. It's sunset here is around about 9 o'clock still, which is rather nice. So there's still 3 hours of daylight here. It's nice.
Excellent. Pleased to hear it. And also, Gaz, thank you very much for joining us as well. We'll see you again very soon. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Okay, that's it for this week. We'll as ever, we'll finish with our final shot, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye now.